You have a lot of choice for a microphone. I'm very happy also to have you for this microeconomic outlook. As we know, there are breaking news. So let me ask you a couple of questions. Who will actually give us...
You're talking about German elections?
No, I'm not talking specifically about that. I'm talking about everywhere in the world happening, actually, as you have the great insights about these breaking news. So first of all, something that obviously concerns us all, what can we expect from US election results? What could be the impacts?
Well, I think the impact is going to be quite significant for a very simple reason, is that Trump today is very different from Trump 2016. He has a very clear mandate. He has been elected without any doubt. He's probably going to get the popular vote as well. So he's got the Supreme Court, he got the Senate, he's probably going to get the House as well. So he has a very clear mandate and a lot of powers to do his program. So to answer your question, I know there are a lot of people thinking that Trump is not going to do half of what he says, but he has said so much that it's still a lot. So my guess is that we can summarize Trump thinking that he's an isolationist guy and a mercantilist guy. So when he says America's first, America's first, every chief of government wants his country first. So this is not different. But what is really different from Trump, from Biden, for Trump to Biden is that very much he's an isolationist guy. So probably the trade war. The trade war is going to accelerate, and we know he say I'm a tariff man. He thinks that tariff is working, even though the trade deficit was at the widest when he was in power. So it's still not very much a big solution. But let's say he's going to increase big time. We're talking about 10-20% across the board of tariff, 60% for China, 100% for countries which are de-dollarizing themselves, 100% more on electrical vehicles. So this is probably something much bigger than 2016. At the time, the tariff, it was 3%, so it's much bigger, trade war. Then probably Trump is someone inclined to do a little bit of deregulation as well. So we can see that yesterday with many sectors. The banking sector was benefiting from that, but obviously he's in favor of lean government, even though over the last 5 years in the US, and keep that in mind, the deficit in the US, the average deficit in the US over the last 5 years, it's 9%. So what Trump is going to do is to increase its public spending, not to decline that. And all his program is about that. So it's going to be a very big push for America. So our conclusion is that probably for the US is going to be quite good. There are lots of debate about the effect of Trumpnomics, because when you put some tariff, well, you increase inflation, that's for sure, so you diminish your purchasing power, so that's not good for consumption, which is 2/3 of US economy. But on the other way around, if you put a lot of money, probably it's not that bad for the economy. It's probably going to be a geopolitical game changer. Once again, he wants to stop any given aid to Ukraine. He wants to stop many things. He wants to pay big time, as he said, Europe. He thinks of India as a terrible aggressor. So the geopolitical landscape is going to change very dramatically. G. Evans said that Taiwan has to, it's not their concern anymore. So I think the geopolitical landscape is going to change.
Well, given what you just said, with this highly unstable political context, what are the prospects for deglobalization?
Well, I think this is what I mentioned with the tariff. Tariff is no good for obviously for trade. So for deglobalization, obviously it's going to be less favorable. Of late we have seen a bit of a rebound of global trade post-COVID for sure. But even though this year it was a bit better than expected, with this kind of a regionalization of trade, still very much at play. But clearly, what Trump is about to do is to put a sudden stop to globalization in a way.
And what are the risks then?
But the risk is for global growth. If you put some tariff, like I said, across the board, and especially for a few specific, like electrical vehicles from China, even those done out of Mexico, if you put that all together, you are going to have a strong effect on world trade. Because when you are going to do that, Europe, which is a bit more assertive now, we have seen that with the tariffs on electrical vehicles from China, Europe is going to react to the US. and then China is going to react to the US. So you have a lot of second round effects which are going to affect the world trade, not only between the US and China, but if China cannot export anymore to the US, we expect the trade between China and US to be down by 70% if you put across the board a 60%. So it's going to decline GDP growth of China probably by 1% compared to the previous scenario. And then what China is going to do? China is going to try to export its surplus even more to the rest of the world, including Europe. So Europe has to react to China. So this tit for tat thing is very, very powerful. IMF said 0.8% GDP growth worldwide less next year, 1.3 in 2026. So this is not something marginal. This is an impact on world GDP growth probably going forward.
Let's talk about another topic which is also important, energy transition. Where do you think we're standing, really?
Well, I think the dynamic is very much there. We hear a lot of pushback. Obviously, this is not good news to have in the US economy Donald Trump in this sense, because he says that global warming is a hoax. In the program of the Republican Party, you are not talking about green transition, green ecology. Global warming is not in the program, and not at all. If you take a little bit of analysis of wording, so a bit scary. But then, drill, baby, drill, all these things that we know that the wind farm are killing whales, are making pregnant women delivering birth, etc., etc. We have many things. So obviously this is not good for the dynamic in the US and in the world probably. But having said that, what is very, very striking to me is that the underlying dynamic in the US is not coming from the federal state, obviously. It's coming from you guys, it's coming from corporate world, it's coming from the states at the state level. And when you look at the US and at the world, if you look at the US, just one figure, for instance, this year, year to date in 2024, in terms of solar installation in the US, we are now above 20 gigawatt, which is twice as much as last year. So US are installing a lot of solar panel, and the biggest user of Inflation Reduction Act is Texas. So obviously, this dynamic of what I say and what I do is very, very different. And then when you look at the world, the dynamic is very much here still. If you look at investment today, we are talking about 2 trillion of investment a year on green transition worldwide. So just to give you a figure which is for me very, very striking, is that for each dollar invested in coal, gas, and oil combined, you have $2 invested in renewable energy this year and last year. Last year only, it was connected 560 gigawatt of renewable energy. That's a record, and the dynamic this year is even more dynamic. So I think what Trump is going to do is obviously a setback in the US, which is the second biggest country in terms of emission of carbon. So this is not good news for the planet. But last year, carbon emission of the US were down quite massively. So I think, yes, this is a setback, but I don't think that the global picture of this dynamism towards green energy is going to change for one simple reason, is that green energy is cheaper. So it's not about saving the planet, which is already a good goal in my view, but clearly this is because it's cheaper. So in terms of competitiveness, it's why China is doing that, it's why India is investing massively, is that we see now, even all over the world, 1 car out of 5 today, all over the world, including Africa, all over the world, 1 car out of 5 sold in the world is electrical. So this is going fast.
Great. Well, you want to comment any even earlier breaking news, the last ones, or about Europe? What's happening in Europe?
Well, I know what's happening in Europe. I think let's be optimistic. I was asked to be optimistic because I'm totally depressed. No, just kidding. I think if you could talk about German election, and we see that in many countries in Europe. This problem of coalition, of finding a coalition for a budget. So this is not only French. For French people in the room, it's in Spain. For the last 2 years, they don't have a budget. It's in Belgium, they don't have a government. It's a bit everywhere, this story. But still, sticking to Germany, just one word, I think this is good in a sense, because what is at stake here? Mohamed was rightly so pointing toward Draghi report on this 800 billion a year we need to invest collectively. And all this coalition story in Germany is because they had this opposition within the coalition to break the debt break in a way in Germany, and we see that the whole political spectrum is moving toward more investment in Germany, which is the main engine of growth in Europe. So I think this is quite positive if they spend a little bit more in Germany.
Great. Any other things? I mean, there are breaking news everywhere, obviously, also with the Middle East also happening. Anything impactful for us today?
It's hard to be very optimistic given the geopolitical landscape today, obviously, and I don't know exactly how Trump is going to change that dynamic. Obviously, again, that's an isolationist dynamic that we are going to see out of the US now. So, well, let's see how it evolves in the Middle East and in Ukraine, especially. Obviously, Trump has said he wants to stop aid to Ukraine, so Ukraine will be on its own along with Europe. So we have to accelerate. Maybe to be optimistic for last word is that it makes a bit of a kick to Europe to accelerate its action on its own, in a way.
Great, thank you very much. A great
Thank
applause to you. Thank you.